We know that caregivers contribute a great deal of time to the care that they provide. A third of caregivers say that they provide more than 10 hours of care per week. So if you think about what that looks like, that could be potentially another full-time job. And I know that's what many people say it feels like for them. And the Change Foundation was an organization that did a lot of work, just even as we got started at OCO. So we were established in 2018 out of a lot of the work that happened through the Change Foundation, as well as organizations and caregivers that worked alongside them to help build a case for this type of support. And one thing that they did back then, when minimum wage was $14 an hour, was look at the economic contributions of caregivers. So at that time, when minimum wage was lower, it was looking at about 26 to $72 billion a year that caregivers are, the care that they provide is equivalent to that within the workforce. And so, of course, we know that this makes a profound impact on the person they care for and our society at large. So through my work, as I collaborate with caregivers across our province, we learn a lot. And again, I mentioned our spotlight report too. So a lot of needs come forward. And what we've heard is that over 2/3 of caregivers have really found it difficult to continue with tasks, especially within the last year. People are reporting very high rates of burnout, stress, exhaustion. And the top three things that caregivers say they need are respite time, mental health support for themselves, and peer support. So a sense of community around them with people that understand what they're going through. The other one that I will add to this is financial support. Financial support comes up almost every day as I connect with caregivers. And we do know that 1 in 3 caregivers do face barriers in accessing the support they need. So even if you're able to identify, okay, this is what I'm needing to support myself, to support the person I care for, how do you even start to access that, right? Sometimes even when you do find something, there could be a long wait time or services just aren't available in your region for exactly what you need. And 1 in 4 caregivers say that sometimes they don't actually know how to pinpoint what the need is or where to start with some of those conversations. So what are the impacts looking like? I'm sure many of you feel this way. There could be impacts on your time. You don't always have a lot of time left over for yourself if you're a caregiver. You're constantly thinking about what the person in your life needs from you. You're not always thinking about what you yourself need. The employment work-life balance that we talked about before, but that can also include other aspects of your life. Maybe you have things that you really enjoy doing, some hobbies, can't really balance that with your caregiving. Finances, like I mentioned, a lot of people are taking time off work. Some of it's unpaid to be able to provide caregiving. Other times people have already retired and now they're having to put in additional funds for care and various services. We're also, like I said before, seeing an impact on the health and wellness of caregivers, the mental, emotional, physical, and social aspects of their life. When you don't have that time for you, you can't get out to see friends as often as you might like, or other family members, or just time to kind of explore what you need for you. And then personal relationships. It can definitely impact the relationship that you have with the person that you care for, how things change and shift with the caregiving role. And maybe, like I said, you don't have time to get out and meet that friend for a coffee or go to a movie, go to a dinner. So that can definitely have an impact there. The other thing that I'll mention is that some caregivers do tell us that at times this role can be incredibly rewarding. They're able to give back to that person in their life that's important to them. They're able to see different things and different strengths within themselves as well as the person that they care for. But others say that it's not something that they would have willingly taken on. Maybe the relationship wasn't always strong, wasn't always something that they would consider loving or a caring relationship, but they're the only one there for that person. So they make that choice to be a caregiver. So everyone's coming from a totally different perspective, and everyone's situation is unique. We can't lump every caregiver into one category. So I just want to acknowledge that. And everyone's experience throughout the caregiving role will also be different. So what we know is that caregivers are navigating health and community spaces, programs, and services for themselves, as well as the people they care for. So they're doing double duty a lot of the time. And 56% of caregivers report that organizing care or anything else is really challenging. And many are just looking for that one place to go for information so the system can be a little easier to navigate. So that reason right there is why when we started in 2018, the first service that was put into place was the Ontario Caregiver Helpline. So we actually work in partnership with Ontario 2-in-1 to deliver this service, which means that we've got access to the community resource specialists who are trained and certified in how to help people get information, build insights through conversation, and find the right type of service or any type of service option based on the needs that are coming forward. And what happens is the helpline is different than something like a 2-on-1 call, if you've ever used that service, or other hotlines or helplines, because the community resource specialists answering our helpline are trained specifically in caregiver needs and experiences. And they ask different questions that you might not get at other lines, right? So even if someone calls in and they're asking still for support for the person they care for, our specialists will then pause and say, okay, but what can we find for you? Let's think about what you might need. Here's what the Ontario Caregiver Organization offers. Here's some other services within your community that might be beneficial to you as a caregiver. So it's not just about getting into our programs. We just want to make sure you find what you yourself needs. And that might be with another organization that offers a specialty service within your community. So the phone support is 24/7 every single day of the year. And we also have a live chat feature, which runs Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And this is really focused on that information and referral piece. So this is not a crisis line, but our specialists are trained and able to dispatch into emergency services if that's required, or into a local crisis line or distress line. And this is available to all Ontario caregivers. It's live answer in French or English, but also we have 150 different languages available by phone through an interpretation service. So if you need something other than French and English, you're looking for a different language, you can ask for that language when they answer, and they can get that interpreter on the line to assist with that. This is also a confidential service, so your information is not being shared anywhere you don't want it to be. If you provide if you let the specialist know that they can help you register for a program or something, then they will move forward and assist you with that. But otherwise, this is a confidential service. So what I want to break down here is, like, that's all well and good. I'm sure some people are thinking, okay, well, that's nice, but I haven't been able to find what I need from different services. So really what this comes down to is that there are 4 main steps to successful navigation. And this is how we build our helpline. The first thing is giving people a space and opportunity to share their experience and define their needs through that conversation with a specialist or a community service provider. From there, that's where you can explore some options and hopefully get connected to something that's a match for you. There will be times when you call something like a helpline and you're not getting exactly what you were looking for, and there's various reasons for that. Many of us know that there are eligibility criteria. Sometimes there's those wait lists. Other times in your community, there just isn't that perfect match. But the idea behind this and the opportunity to connect with a specialist is that sometimes we can get a little creative. And even though you're asking for one specific service, if that doesn't exist or you can't access it for some reason, the idea is that you start to look at some other options too, and hopefully find something that can help you along the way. But then the other piece after you get connected that we offer to many people on our helpline is a follow-up. Sometimes people aren't ready to go ahead that day and call somewhere or fill out an application form, and you need a little time to make some decisions and get things accomplished. So that's where we can book a follow-up call. So the specialist would book you in at a time that works for you, maybe a week later, a day later, a month later, and be able to check in and say, how did that referral go? Did it work out for you? And from there, they can make some other suggestions. And they can also help you get registered for our internal programs too, like I mentioned at the OCO. So of course, as you can imagine, It's really important for us to continue building partnerships across our communities with other types of service providers and community leaders, because you're going to have a variety of needs. And the way things are broken down across our community looks different depending on where you live, or what's available to you looks different depending on where you live. So we've got regional programs right in the community. There's national programs and resources, as well as provincial ones like our own. And so once the information is gathered, that's when they can start to give you some different ideas as to where you could go next based on your needs. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that it can be hard to know where to start because some supports are also very condition specific. So for instance, we serve all caregivers, but there are organizations that serve very specific caregivers, like the local Alzheimer's societies or dementia society, where if you're supporting a person living with a form of dementia, then they have support services available for you in the community. And there's many other examples too, of course. But the idea is that when you call into something like our helpline, you identify what you're looking for, or even just some of the needs that you have, they can help narrow that down to find the best possible match for you. So I want to tell you a little bit more too what we offer internally at the OCO. So on your screen here, you're going to see some examples. And again, all of this has been built alongside caregivers. So we have one-to-one peer support options. We've got one-to-one coaching. We have online support groups. Our programs right now are all virtual. We also have a well-being program called Scale. And this is a series of 8 webinars, and it's focused on very specific needs for caregiver well-being and understanding how to build all of that into your life. So any type of wellness initiatives and goals, how to build that in. We run it twice a year, and it's coming up again in October. So registration will be opening in August. And through this program, you also have access to one-to-one counseling through an external provider and group counseling. So it can be a nice option for people just to kind of understand more about how they can find help for themselves and how to continue that within their lifestyle. We do monthly webinars at the OCO, and so these are publicly available, and they're on a variety of topics that caregivers have told us are important to them. So we'll bring in subject matter experts and caregivers and walk through a lot of different topics. And then they're recorded and always available on our YouTube page. You'll also find on our website, we've got a number of different tools for working caregivers, how to balance both worlds, strategies to build. We've got toolkits and tip sheets for many different aspects of the caregiving role. So for instance, we've got our I Am a Caregiver toolkit. This is a great first step for many caregivers, whether you're new to caregiving or if you have been a caregiver for a great deal of time. It gives you a chance to kind of organize everything you do each day, all of those tasks, everything that you're getting done. And from there, you can also do a survey for yourself, a self-guided survey to understand how you're coping. What are some of those main challenges? And what that does is help you identify those needs that we talked about before. And I know some of you might be sitting there thinking, I don't even have time for that. I barely have time to be here at this webinar. But if you can make that part of your strategy, a goal, even within the next week or 2 weeks, to sit down, check in with yourself and be able to fill out something like that, it could really help identify some areas where you can access support and be able to articulate what those needs are. We also have e-learning courses, so you get a certificate from those, and they're on a variety of different topics like supporting someone living with a mental health or addiction condition, even how to, caregiving 101. So if you're just starting out, what you should be thinking about and some ideas there. We have a podcast when people like to learn that way, where we have, again, subject matter experts and caregivers speaking there. We're moving into season 4 for next year. We have 90-Second Caregiver. This is a health newsletter, and it comes through your email once a week. And again, various topics. The whole idea is that you can read it within 90 seconds because this is a very fast-paced world. Not everyone has a lot of time. And then we have things like Young Caregivers Connect. So this is a space specifically for caregivers under the age of 25 who can get connected and find some support. So the idea behind the reason I'm running through all of this is because I know some questions were out there regarding, well, what's even available to me? So this gives you a sample. But like I said, if you do call helpline, you're not just going to get an overview of what we do. You're also going to have opportunities for matching within your community. So I want to just kind of talk through some other examples as well. I'm going to go back here for a moment. So now that you know what we offer, how our helpline works, let's talk through some examples of what you might be needing. And it's kind of like a case study of how we can help you. So something like medical equipment, as an example. I know there's a lot of caregivers out there who are purchasing medical equipment or trying to find subsidies and support for things like that. Even home modifications, depending on the situation or the condition of the people that you care for. So there are, again, it comes down to what is the funding and program situation within your region, but then what are some other programs or organizations that do offer this type of support? One example is March of Dimes. So March of Dimes has provincial funding for a home modification program, right? So that's something that we would suggest to somebody calling in looking for a financial support on that. Also, people will call in and say, I don't know what benefits are available to me through my taxes, or is there something through Service Canada that I can apply for? So what we've actually done is at the OCO, we have partnered with the Canadian Revenue Agency and Service Canada to build out specific resource lists for caregivers and all the different things that you can look into for additional financial support. Of course, eligibility criteria is there. Everyone's situation is different, but it at least gives you a place to start so you know what to look for or what to access. And so there are many times too when caregivers find even the Service Canada Benefit Finder helpful, where they can type in some keywords of what they're looking for and figure out what it is that they can apply for. The other thing is that you might be looking for programs for yourself within your community where you can go and join an art class. Or is there an organization where they have in-person support groups? Because that's a need for you. Again, we can help find a match for you within your community for something like that too. And then we also hear from families who are parents and then also a caregiver. Sometimes they are a caregiver for their child living with a condition or a disability. So there's things like family support hubs across the province that are peer-led. So that's another thing that we could look out for you, search the database, and also through the partnerships that we create across regions that helps us get people into those programs and make it a little easier to join in on those types of services. So I'm just going to take a minute before we get into our Q&A period. I want to make sure we have enough time for that and tell you a little bit more about what we do for caregiver insights and engagement. So I mentioned that we have things like our advisory group, we have a panel, working groups. And the idea behind this is that if caregivers want to get involved in some way and be able to provide their own insight, these are things that you can join in on at the OCO. And you can start by filling out a volunteer application. And we do provide financial support for the time that caregivers put into the work. So that's something that's there too. We do provide some financial compensation for the work that caregivers put in, the volunteer work that they put in. And you can help co-design and co-develop different resources, or even just be able to say, you know, like these are the challenges that I face and the things that I wish I had access to, and help guide some of the future work that we do. For those of you who are working in various organizations, community support roles, or just within the health and community system at large, we do a lot of engagement there. And so if we haven't connected already, we're very interested to. So we do work with care providers and system leaders across many sectors and collaborate where it makes sense, right? From there, we've been able to create a care provider resource center. And so there's tools and different collections of information there to help you as you support caregivers and have that perspective too. We also have e-learning available for providers, and we have worked with various Ontario health teams across the province to make sure that as everyone's working on navigation for community members, that caregivers are also a part of that planning. And even for the community itself, if there's going to be one place to go to search for local supports, we want to make sure that the caregiver perspective is there because there's so many across our communities. And this will also just give you a sample of what's available for the providers that are on the call today. So how you can include caregivers as a partner on the care team, connecting caregivers to support for their well-being, because sometimes caregivers need to be asked that question of, what about you? How are you doing today? What can I help find for you? Many times as you're going to appointments with the people that you care for, you are just speaking about them, right? You don't always have the chance to tell a provider or a support person what you need. And then, of course, we have some ideas on how to engage caregivers to inform care design and delivery, since they're the ones who are taking care of everything at home. I mentioned earlier, too, that we have a number of resources for working caregivers. And the other side of that, and part of my role, is working with employers. So actually engaging employers to support their caregiving employees. So we have tools and e-learning for them. I also do a lot of tailored training sessions, which helps to support leadership, HR, and management. So we have a good amount of time for discussion today. I'm seeing some things pop up in the chat. I will pause and stop sharing so we can discuss further. And I just wanted to let you know that I will be sharing the slides today, as well as a list of resources, so that way you'll have access to those. But thank you for listening, and let's see what questions we have.